Sylvia Porter. I live in Alcoa, Tennessee. I currently work as a team leader for adult community training in Lenoir City, Tennessee. We provide care for the developmentally disabled. I supervise 5 different homes for these clients. I have 1 child and 2 grandchildren.
Very good. Now, I know a lot about you, but don't know as much as I want to know. So if you could tell me, you graduated from Hall High.
Right.
I remember you in college because we would take annual trips down there. I want you to tell me what your college life was and where you went and about that experience.
I attended college at Tennessee State University in Nashville. I received 2 degrees in psychology, both undergraduate and graduate. My college experience was wonderful. I recall it with a great deal of pleasure. It was a very pleasant experience, a very broadening experience from somebody who came from a very sheltered environment.
Sylvia, tell me how many brothers and sisters do you have?
I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters.
Okay, and you're blessed to still have your mother with you, right?
Very blessed to still have my 94-year-old mother.
Very good. Okay, let's go into your occupation. Tell me your first job. Tell me a little something about your first job.
My very first job out of college was teaching college at Texas Southern University in Houston. I taught a variety of courses. I taught general psych, mental hygiene, educational psych, and taught all levels of classmen.
And one of the things that we're dealing with is integration. So finding out that maybe you were the first black from Blount County to do DHS. Tell me what DHS is really.
I can tell you what DHS was because I'm sure that agency has evolved over the years, but when I started there, it was the Department of Human Services. It had several arms. AFDC at that time, which is now Families First, but it was aid to families with dependent children. There were social services, and under that arm there was protective services and community services where people were determined eligible for a variety of services, daycare and that kind of thing. And then food stamps was another arm of the Department of Human Services at that time.
How did you get your position and what was it?
My position was county director, and I was responsible for the entire county office. An old classmate of mine called to determine my interest in the position, and at that point I was very interested because I was looking to come back home and needed a job, of course.
And the old classmate was?
The old classmate was James Tucker.
Okay. What was, started to call him by his nickname, what was Mr. Tucker's
position? He was an assistant commissioner. He was assistant commissioner to the commissioner for human services.
Okay, so this was a political job.
Well, they call them political, but they could be, or they didn't have to be.
Yeah, right. when it served their purpose. Tell me a little bit about how the experience of your going to that position. Tell me about your interview. Who was your interview with?
My interview was with, my very first interview was with the commissioner of the department. I flew down to Nashville to interview with him. And then later interviewed with the regional director of the Department of Human Services, Toledo Kopic. She was responsible for, I think at that time, maybe 12 counties in the region, and that's changed over the years too. They gerrymander those counties to suit the needs of the department. My interview's very gracious, very cordial, very pleasant.
Was the woman white?
Yes.
So when you went for the interview, did you really think that you would get it?
I knew I had it.
It
because it started from the top down. It didn't. It was different.
Tell me, okay. What year was this?
1975.
Okay. Was this an affirmative action position?
I have no idea. I'm sure the commissioner, well, and of course I can't speak for him, but knowing him, he probably had some feeling about adding some diversity to the department.
Right. So tell me what your idea of how do you feel about affirmative action?
Well, even as I entered that position, I felt very strongly because I knew what a groundbreaking kind of thing it was. I didn't realize it when I agreed to it. It wasn't until all of the uproar after I got in the job that I really realized how significant this was for this county. And so I knew I had to be successful. I had to be good. I had to be effective. And to me, that meant I had to be able to hire people who could and would do the job. Mm-hmm. And fortunately, by the time I came into the position, the powers that be, and what did they call them? They had a name. I can't, it completely escapes me now, but all hiring was supposed to be run by them, and they could either approve or disapprove. By the time I got in the position, they had placed about all of the people that they wanted to, so they pretty much left me alone, and I really could try to make some choices based on experience and what people brought to the job.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember your first day on the job?
Very well.
Talk to us about it.
I went into the office, was met very graciously by the staff, but it wasn't long before the Daily Times was over there, and they were taking pictures and doing some interviewing, and my dad came by to make sure I was okay and brought me some roses. It was, well, I remember that beginning, but the rest of it was a blur. The staff helped me learn what I needed to know to do the job. There were some good people there. There were one or two who were a little resentful, but for the most part, these were good people who were only interested in doing their job and helping me learn what I needed to know so that they could do their jobs. Mm-hmm. Those first weeks were exhausting because of the demand on your time and attention. I wasn't doing anything that had to do with the job. It was just that it was just so public, and people just made it more than it really needed to be. So it was exhausting. As I said, I wouldn't get to bed before 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and then right back up to start that all over again. It was rough. The phone calls. There was a very prominent attorney in town who called the office. I had been out, and at that time we were not all under the same roof. Food Stamps was up in the courthouse. We were down on Broadway, And I'd make periodic trips up there for various reasons. And I suppose I had made one of those trips and came back and had this message from this attorney to come to his office. And I didn't like the sound of it, so I didn't go. Imagine that I had that kind of backbone. But I waited a day or two and called and went up to see him. He was also a state legislator. And he threatened me. Very veiled and very sort of polite. Well, not so veiled, because he told me, one of his comments to me was, if you do anything wrong, if you make any misstep, you can expect to hear from me.
What year was this?
1975. I immediately came back and called Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
And discouraged any retaliation, because that was going to help nothing. I mean, things were pretty bad right then, and all I wanted to do was to have them calm down so I could try to do the job.
Right.
And of course, eventually they did. Things calmed down, but it took a while. There were all kinds of editorials in the Times, almost every day. Letters to the editor. I was called a carpetbagger because I came to the job from Illinois. Mm-hmm. And of course, people were, I had lots of advocates and people rebutting those letters. They would answer them and say, she grew up here, her family still lives here. She went to school here and all of that, but to a lot of people, I was a carpetbagger because I came in from the north and took this job. And besides that, the person that I succeeded was popular among some local politicians at the time.
So you were the first in the department in Blount County?
I was the first in the state.
You were first in the state of Tennessee.
Right. At the time that I was hired, there was a black assistant director in Hamilton County.
Okay. In Hamilton County, Chattanooga.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So when you had meetings, when you had the state meetings, joint meetings, were there times
You mean regional?
Yes.
And we all got together?
Right.
Those people were wonderful. They really were wonderful. The other county directors, there was only one, and he was pretty advanced in age, and from a county known not to be very open-minded, and so I wasn't surprised at all. But he was very much the exception. I was really embraced. They tried to do whatever they could to help me, but as it turns out, after I'd been on the job a little while, they'd call me and say, what are you doing about such and such? Which was kind of nice that they respected my opinion, and they respected how I thought things through and how I problem solved. But it's such a good group of people. Such a good group of people, really.
Good. So Blount County, you're back in Blount County. You've
Mm-hmm.
gone through all of that. Tell me what you think about Blount County 2008.
Well, unfortunately, I have not been able to get a job in Blount County since. I don't know what that means. There was a lady, and I know you would know her, Dorothy. Her name escapes me now. I think she was affiliated with Maryville College, but she sat on a board that interviewed me for a job, and I did not get the job, obviously. But she called me.
Sue Wyatt.
Yes. She called me to say, I just think it's criminal that somebody with your background and experience cannot work at home. And she gave me some leads, which didn't pan out, but I have not been able to find a job in Blount County since.
Not fun being the first.
No.
The one thing that I know about Blount County is they remember, And the powers that be are still,
Mm-hmm.
even from the grave, they're still. I can't get a job in Blount County either. But, okay, if knowing what you've been through,
Mm-hmm.
knowing what you know, and I really can say it, and I speak for everybody in the room, you're an exception to the rule. And I knew you would have gone the extra mile in DHS. And the idea that they accepted it is great to hear. It's 2008. We're getting ready to. We have elected an African American president. Yeah, and I'm sure you kept up with the primaries and all of that. Tell me what you think about. I mean, were you torn between having the first woman and having the first black, or did you think about that?
When Obama first announced, I was very concerned. I just kept thinking, oh, if he'd just wait a little while. Because, you know, he hadn't been on the national scene very long. And I was just afraid that maybe he was rushing it. I wanted him to get a little seasoned. You know what I'm saying? And just having watched him campaign, you know, his stock just hit the ceiling for me. What an intelligent, articulate, poised, thoughtful, reasonable human being that man is. Mm-hmm. And you couldn't help but want a national leader like that. So, you know, I started out being very concerned for him and wanting him, you know, just give yourself 4 more years at least, to just really, really being very pleased and feeling blessed that the country elected such a man.
Right. I too had to go through that. Okay. When we first started out doing this, we were going to do like the people who integrated the schools.
Mm-hmm.
There were 15 to Alcoa and 4 to Maryville. 4 blacks to Maryville High School.
I didn't realize that.
Integrated in 1963. Their stories are amazing. But all of them tell the same story of being the first, including you.
Mm-hmm.
Even in 2008, there are positions that the first will still have to enter into. There are still some young blacks that are going to have to go into positions in Blount County that are going to be the first.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And a lot of women, young black girls, is going to do the dual role of being the first woman
and the
first black. So you've been the first woman and the first black. What words would you tell a young person that's going to be in that position?
My focus, and I think that's how I got through that, was to do a good job. I just tried not to let any of the rest distract me, because at first I really was very depressed at the reaction and how very bitter people were and downright ugly about it. And had I dwelt on that, I really would probably have been made non-functional, and I just could not do that. If I was going to do the job, I was going to stay and do the job. I could not think about the fact that there were people who didn't want me there. And another thing, I think because I did my job, people had to come back and say, we can't find any fault with her. Mm-hmm. And that upset them, but I mean, you know, what could they do? Mrs. Coppock said later, and she never once hinted that. I think she was a veteran. I think she had always worked in the Department of Human Services from way back when as a young woman. I think the state paid for her education, and she had a reputation of running one of the best regions in the state. She was good, and I think her only concern when she first met me was that I do a good job. She didn't care what color I was. She had that kind of pride in the job she did and how well her region was run. But she wasn't real happy about it. She didn't know me from Adam, when she first met me. But she said to me when I left, "You have done a marvelous job, and I so appreciate you." She was just so very gracious. So anybody thrust into that position needs to focus on doing the very best job that they can do. And you're going to always have detractors. It doesn't matter if you're the first of anything. You're going to have detractors. That's human nature. Mm-hmm. So you just can't let that sidetrack you,
So today's November the 22nd, 2008. And you told us that you haven't been able to find a job here in Blount County. So are you satisfied with just retiring from the job that you were in the North City? Or is there something else that you would want to do?
I don't have any ambitions for anything as high-powered as that. Since that time, all I've had were jobs that were full of responsibility and lots of hours, lots of long hours. That's not where I want to head. I'm not ready to quit working, but when I leave the job I'm in now, I'd like to find something part-time and fun.
Enjoy yourself.
That's right.
Yeah.
I just... I've always worked in service positions that children at risk, economically disadvantaged people, that kind of thing, and it's been hard. It's been rewarding, but it's been hard. And if I moved to anything else, I just wanted to be really low key.
Say, Sylvia, who? We thank you. This has been rewarding. As I've told everybody, we're going to try to bring everybody back and just let them sit in a circle and talk. And we're going to celebrate Black History in February. We're going to start with the first Sunday and end with the last Sunday. And all of this is going to tie in. Thank you very much.
That sounds very good.